Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido, and today it is the Pastoria Hydros going up against the Kitakami Rogues. And as these two sides have a look at their opening hand, let's have a look at this tail of the tape because I cannot wait for this contest. The Hydros, sitting in second place, have been contesting for the top of the leaderboard all season long, whereas for the Kitakami Rogues, they are the only team so far this season to have not dropped a series, going 2-1 in every contest, slowly climbing their way up the standings. But with all that said, as they finally go head to head, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win this matchup. Will it be the water decks? Will it be the darkness decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And starting off this match, it is the Ruins of Hope deck with the Carvanha in the active spot for the Hydros. It is the Kitakami Rogues going with the Alolan Rattata from their Potown deck in their active spot, both sides only having one basic Pokemon, as it is the Primarina pulled for the Hydros. We can see, and they are playing it, that Professor's Research. They get an additional 2 cards, the Rare Candy and the Sharpedo, which is fantastic for the Carvanha on that active position, as the leftovers are also in hand along with the Lily and the Big Malasada. It is the Purloin being pulled for the Kitakami Rogues that they do move on to the bench. They do get that first energy needed for the Alolan Rattata to go with the bite here onto the Carvanha, who only has 40 health remaining, so it could become an easy target, especially if the Rogues are able to pull their Alolan Raticate. It is the Brion being pulled here for the Pastoria Hydros, the Carvanha getting its first required energy. They're having a look at the Sharpedo. They have an empty bench, so they don't want to run the risk. They are going to evolve the Carvanha into the Sharpedo, and they think of using the Big Malasada, but instead they're going to go with the leftovers. This will allow the Sharpedo to restore 10 health at the end of every turn of the Hydros, and we have seen this Ruins of Hope deck be very dominant, especially with the health healing properties of the Primarina that we can see in its hand. And there are 2 of them in that deck, as it is the Alolan Meowth being pulled for the Kitakami Rogues. They've got the 2 Alolan Persians already in hand, so they do get a first energy onto it, and they think of playing the Guzma here. But instead they are just going to go with the bite, and by keeping the Alolan Rattata in the active spot, Sharpedo can easily take it off the board. It's the Tapu Fini who also has those healing properties as well with that Spiral Drain, but it's the second energy as Tapu Fini is moved onto the bench. They are going to play the Big Malasada as well, restoring 10 health for the Sharpedo, and with this crunch, they don't care about discarding the energy from the Alolan Rattata, they care about discarding it from the board entirely, but they will still get to do the coin flip, and it is a tails. But either way, the Hydros have taken the first point here in game 1 of this 3-game series, where for each game you win, you get 2 victory points counted towards the leaderboard. Both these sides are in contention for the top of the leaderboard at the moment. As we said at the start of the game, we've been waiting all season for this, as these 2 sides have continued to be very impressive, and it is the Alolan Persian with that fake out, does 50 damage coming online, can also leave the opposing Pokemon paralyzed. They need to flip a heads to do so though, and there is that fake out, 50 damage onto the Sharpedo. They need to flip the heads, and it is a tails. This is great for the Hydros, and we can see that second Purloin in hand for the Rogues, as the second Primarina has been pulled for the Hydros. And Tapu Fini does receive its first of 3 required energy, as the Sharpedo continues with the crunch, 50 damage onto the Alolan Persian. They're trying to get that energy discarded from it as well, and they are successful. There's the leftovers restoring 10 health. This will force the Rogues to have to put an energy onto the Persian if they want to keep it on the offensive. It is the second Rattata being pulled here for the Rogues, but they can easily take their first point of this contest as well. They get a second energy onto the Persian, and another fake out is going to discard Sharpedo from the board. So early on, both sides with 1 point each. It'll be interesting to see how they can separate themselves here. The Sharpedo being taken off the board. It will be the Tapu Fini being moved into the active spot as their only Pokemon on the bench for the Hydros, and it does come back over to them, and they finally get a Poplio in hand. They've also got a Rare Candy, so they can get a Primarina online extremely fast. But they cannot go on the offensive with the Tapu Fini just yet. It does require 3 energy to do that 60 damage, but when it is online, it also restores 20 health for itself. As it comes back over to the Rogues, they do pull their second Meowth, and they've got the second Persian in hand, so they immediately get Meowth onto the bench, and they do get that first energy on it. That Purloin's been in this contest on the bench since the start. Another fake out. They want the Tapu Fini to be left with this paralysis, and they get the heads as well. Tapu Fini is going to be paralyzed as the Hydros pull the Popplio. There is not much they can do in regards to going on the offensive with the Tapu Fini. They do get that second Popplio onto the bench. They get a Brion on line. Now, if they'd taken the Primarina on line, they could have restored the health of the Tapu Fini. This could be an error for the Hydros, as the Poison Barb has been pulled for the Rogues, and they're going to get that second Alolan Persian on line. And it does take 20 less damage from attacks thanks to its ability. It's got 2 energy on it now. They are going to retreat the active Persian, moving the full strength Persian into the active spot. They get the Poison Barb onto it as well with the Claw Slash, 50 damage, and it will be the second point now for the Rogues, wiping Tapu Fini off the table. And the Rogues are 1 point away from taking game 1. And those battle points, those first to 3, they still count towards our leaderboard, as well as all the damage. But it is the series that you want to win. You want to try and go a clean sweep, and we haven't seen a single one of them from the Rogues all season, as we do see the Rare Candy being played by the Hydros. Even though they just pulled the Buron, they want both Primarinas on line, and with 2 energy, they can ride that Surf, 60 damage onto the Alolan Persian. That Poison Barb will be activated, so Primarina will have to contend with the poisoning, but there's that Lily in hand for the Hydros. It does restore 60 health from a stage 2 Pokemon, a maximum of 60 health. It can't get them beyond their maximum health, as that Purloin is getting its first energy. The Alolan Eradicate has been pulled, and another Claw Slash from the Alolan Persian here. 50 damage onto the Primarina, plus that poisoning coming into play as the Hydros pull their own Poison Barb. They could try and deter the Rogues from going on the offensive. That benched Primarina receives its first energy, and with this Melodious Healing, 30 damage restored for Primarina. They can use both Primarinas to do this. They are going to restore 60 health. That's more damage than what the Alolan Persian could deal. The only Pokemon in the deck of this Po-Town deck from the Kitakami Rogues that does more than 60 damage is the Liepard, as another Surf from the Primarina onto the Alolan Persian, bringing it down to only 20 health remaining. And again, that poisoning afflicting the Primarina, the Pokeball being pulled for the Kitakami Rogues here, and they are going to play that immediately as they do look through their deck, but they've got all their basic Pokemon that have been taken out of that deck, so it's not going to work. And they are going to take their time. They're going to play the Guzma, though. That will get that Poison Barb discarded from the Primarina here. They don't want their own Persian to be dealing with that poisoning, but it's only got 20 health remaining. It is a very easy target for this Primarina. They do move the second Purloin into that final bench position. They're hoping they can get the Liepards to do as much damage as possible. They are going for the Claw Slash, but as we said, that will immediately be offset. There's that poisoning to do the additional 10. The second Tapu Fini has been pulled from the deck of the Hydros, who think of playing the Lily, and again, Lily restores a maximum of 60 health, but that Melodious Healing from the 2 Primarinas does the exact same, immediately offsetting all the damage that Primarina just took in the previous turn. And they continue to ride that Surf with their active and poisoned Primarina, as the benched Primarina just gets its second energy as well, that 10 damage, but the Hydro is wiping that Persian off the board. Have gotten their second point. The next point will win this game, and it's hard for the Rogues at the moment because they cannot generate enough power, enough offense to take down these Primarinas. They are practically just trying to stall out this game, as it is the Liepard that is finally pulled for the Rogues. They do get that onto the bench. It is their active Persian that has 50 health remaining. They're trying for the fake out. They need the paralysis to keep them in this contest. They need to flip the heads or they will lose this game, and they do get the heads. This is fantastic for them because Primarina now cannot go on the offensive. It can still restore its health, but it also cannot retreat as the second Sharpedo is pulled. This has just bought the Rogues another turn here to try and get some damage, to try and think of a plan, to try and stall this out, as that Melodious Healing completely offsets the damage from the Persian and the poisoning. Overall, Primarina is taking a maximum of late of 70 damage between the end of the Hydro's turn and by the time it gets back to them, so it's only losing 10 damage, 10 health in all that time. There is a third energy onto the benched Primarina, as the active Primarina, cured of its paralysis, still with the poisoning. They are going to get the leftovers though onto the Alolan Persian. When it's in the active spot, it can restore 10 health at the end for every one of the Kitakami Rogues' turns. So plus they play the big Melisada to restore 10 health. They get a second energy onto that benched Liepard. They go for another fake out. They want another paralysis here. They need the heads, but they get the tails. However, Persian is safe thanks to the leftovers, taking it out of discard range. It has 70 health here. Again, they're trying to stall out the Pastoria Hydros and this Ruins of Hope deck. These two sides cannot separate themselves right now. They are going to retreat that poisoned Primarina here, and they can still use that Melodious Healing because it restores the health of all the water types on the side of the Pastoria Hydros if they've taken any damage. And they are just keeping their two Primarinas on the board. They don't want to move the Tapu Fini onto the bench here, as it's 60 damage onto that Alolan Persian with the leftovers. It is the second Alolan Raticate being pulled for the Kitakami Rogues. They do get a second energy onto the benched Perlin, and they're going to retreat the Persian, moving the Lipard 60 health into the active spot. This Slashing Claw 70 damage onto the Primarina, but again, it's just going to be offset by this Melodious Healing, as it is the Carvanha being pulled. It is an energy back onto that benched Primarina, and we continue with the Melodious Healing. There it is, restoring the health of both Primarinas here. That benched Primarina that was previously poisoned is now back at full strength. All the effort the Rogues put into it has been absolutely wiped off the board, but still both sides trying to get their third point. And if we get to turn 30 and it ends and no one takes that point, we are going to end up with a tie game. Maybe that's what the Rogues are aiming for, because that seems like all they can do is they play their Professor's Research, they get an additional 2 cards, they get their X speed, and they get their second Lipard here, which allows them to retreat their active Lipard, moving their second Lipard into the active spot. And again, 90 health, another Slashing Claw, 70 damage onto the Primarina. We are counting down these turns. The Hydros need something to go right here, as the Rogues are running out of Pokemon to switch into the active spot. There is that health being restored thanks to that Melodious Healing. And if we do end up with a tie game here in game 1, both sides will get 1 victory point towards the leaderboard, but this Surf continues to be ridden. The Hydros are the only side it seems capable of winning this contest. It is another Guzma being pulled for the Rogues. There is no more Pokemon tools though on the side of the Hydros. It is the Alolan Rattata moved onto the bench. They've got those Raticates in hand, as the Rogues, that Potown deck has been emptied. They're going to retreat the Lipard. They move the Persian into the active spot. It's got 10 health, but they need the Paralysis. They need to flip the heads to keep this Primarina from going on the offensive. And they get it as well. The Rogues are buying themselves all the time to draw out this game. There's the 10 health being restored for the Persian. Primarina cannot go on the offensive. It cannot retreat whilst that Paralysis is in play, but it can go again with this Melodious Healing. So much damage being done in this matchup, being offset by this Melodious Healing, but all that damage does still count towards the leaderboard. That is the crazy thing that is happening. Both these sides are just doing massive amounts of damage to each other, but they cannot wipe each other off the board. The Rogues, they get the Alolan Raticate onto the bench. They do get an energy onto it here. They are going to retreat the Persian. Raticate having 110 health. The Hydros, this is their last turn. They will not be able to take down the Raticate. They can use the Melodious Healing to restore the 10 health on Primarina, but they're not going to worry about it because they know exactly what's going to happen. They're going to ride that surf. Raticate has 50 health remaining. This is the last turn of this game. The Rogues, they can do that 50 damage thanks to the Raticate onto the Primarina, but these two sides are unable to separate themselves. It is a tie game. And as we have our quick table reset, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, please leave a like and subscribe so don't miss out on any of the action in the PokeType League TCG, as it is going to be the Kitakami Rogues going first here in Game 2 with their Alter Genesis deck. They have got the 2 Absols in hand, plus the Trubbish, and they think of going with the Trubbish in the active spot, but change their mind, going with the Absol, Trubbish on the bench. It is the Alolan Sandshrew from the Pastoria Hydros Luminous Frost deck going into their active spot. They have no other basic Pokemon. But here we go, Game 2. A series can still be won by taking the next 2 games, but neither side could separate themselves in the first one. And as we said, the Rogues have not lost the series all season, and it is the Pokeball being played by the Rogues to get the Nihilego in hand. They also have that Poipole. Both Pokemon moved onto the bench, so they have a full bench now. And with Nihilego on the bench, if a Pokemon on the side of the Hydros is poisoned, it will do double damage, or an additional 10, sorry, because it does stack, and there are 2 Nihilegos inside this deck of the Kitakami Rogues. As the Alolan Sandslash was pulled for the Hydros, they get the first energy onto Sandshrew, so that Scratch does 20 damage to the Absol. Now, Absol does require 2 energy, receiving its first for that Unseen Claw, and the second Poipole has been pulled for the Ultragenesis deck, but it comes back over and the Alolan Vulpix has been pulled for the Hydros. They are going to get the Sandslash online. It still only does 20 damage with the Spike Armor, but if in the next turn Sandslash takes damage, it returns 40 damage to the attacking Pokemon as Vulpix gets its first energy. There is no Alolan Ninetales in hand for the Hydros, and Absol only has 40 health at the moment as the Garbodor is pulled for the Kitakami Rogues. And they do play the big Malasada. This will take Absol out of discard range from that Spike Armor return damage. But Garbodor coming online here. It does require 3 energy, but it's a second energy for Absol. This Unseen Claw, 20 damage. It does do an additional 60 if the opposing Pokemon has a status condition. For example, if they're poisoned. But there is that 40 damage back to the Absol. The Vanillux has been pulled. There's 2 Vanillish in hand for the Hydros and a second energy onto Ninetales, who does require 3, as the Spike Armor from Sandslash is going to wipe Absol off the board into the discard pile, and this Luminous Frost deck has taken 0.1 in game 2, but I cannot wait to see how these next 2 games play out, considering these sides couldn't separate themselves in game 1. Those clutch paralysis from the Persian as the Lusamine is pulled for the Rogues. Lusamine does allow discarded energy to be moved to an Ultra Beast such as Nihilego or Poipole, but they don't want Poipole going on the offensive. They don't want to be in discard range from the Sandslash. The second Vulpix being pulled for the Hydros, and they immediately move that to the bench as well as the Ninetales receives its 3rd energy, and they are going to retreat the Sandslash. Now this Blizzard does 60 damage, Poipole has 60 health, and it does 20 damage to all benched Pokemon as well. So Poipole has been discarded, and the Hydros take their second point. The Rogues here in game 2 are yet to take a point. The Hydros are looking to give the Rogues their first series loss. Again, they've gone 2-1 in every series. The second Nihilego has been pulled for the Rogues, immediately moved onto the bench. So if an opposing Pokemon is poisoned, it will take 30 damage from a poison, and they do play the Lusamine as well. This does get 2 energy onto the Nihilego. The second Alolan Sandslash has been pulled for the Hydros as they start generating energy for the Vulpix. The Blizzard, 60 damage onto the Garbodor, plus an additional 20 onto those 2 bench Nihilego. As the Professor's Research has been pulled for the Rogues, they are going to play that immediately to get an additional 2 cards. They do get the Naganadel and they get the Garbodor. Now there is that second Poipole in hand that is now taking up that final bench slot for the Rogues, as Garbodor is going to get its 3rd energy. This Super Poison Breath does 70 damage. They could retreat it if they want to keep it in the match, but with that said, there's 70 damage onto the Ninetales. It will take 30 damage from the poison, but this opens the door for the Hydros. Ninetales, 60 damage. Garbodor has 40 health remaining, and they get the additional 20 across the board. That's 120 damage that the Hydros just did to the Rogues as they take game 2, and they are looking to take the series in game 3. But with our final table reset, it is going to be the Rogues going first with their final remaining deck, the Skull and Bone deck. And we can see the 2 Marinis in hand. They do move one of them into the active spot. They are going to move the second one onto the bench for the Hydros. They've got their Brooklet Hill deck, and we can see the Dewpider and the Shelter both in hand. Dewpider does require 2 energy, so they go with the Shelter in the active spot, Dewpider on the bench. They've also got their Professor's Research, the Poison Barb, and the Guzma. The Rogues have their own Guzma, plus the Toxapex and the Crocodile. But here we go, game 3. The Rogues looking to keep it as a tie series overall as they do pull the Krokorok. The Hydros still looking to take the series win. They pull the leftovers, and they are going to play that Professor's Research immediately, getting an additional 2 cards, the second Dewpider and the big Malasada. And Shelter, as we said, only requires 1 energy. It does do 10 damage with that Tackle, and it does receive the Poison Barb. They want the Rogues to be reluctant to go on the offensive with the Marini. They are immediately going on the offensive with the Shelter here. Marini having a total of 70 health, losing 10 of it as they are going to pull the Sableye. And they can get the Toxapex online immediately too. It is a 4-coin flip Spike Cannon. For each heads they flip, it does 20 damage. They could actually take the Shelter off the board with 4 consecutive heads, and they play the Guzma to discard that Poison Barb from the Shelter. Here we go, those coin flips coming into play. They get 1 heads, they get a tails, they get another heads, they get 2 out of 4 here for 40 damage onto the Shelter. more than halving its health, bringing it down to only 30 health remaining. The Hydro is pulling the fishing net. They can use that to draw a random basic a random basic water Pokemon that is in their discard pile, but there aren't any there yet, as it is the big Malasada being played for the Shelter. They're going to put the leftovers onto it here. We've seen that leftovers come into play, but this will ensure that Shelter will have 50 health, which means Toxapex will need to flip 3 heads if they're hoping to discard Shelter from the table. And this could buy the Hydros a bit of time, especially if they're hoping to get that Araquanid. It is the rare candy being pulled for the Rogues. They still don't have a Sandile in hand. They get a first energy onto that benched Marini, and this time they get the head straight away as well too. And they get the third with that final flip for 60 damage. Shelter has been discarded from the table, and the Rogues will take the first point here, trying to keep their undefeated series. Although they can't, the best they can do in this entire series is get the tie. Lana has been pulled for the Pastoria Hydros, who can come into play. If an Araquanid is on board, they get the second Dewpider onto the bench as that active Dewpider gets its second energy. This hook does 30 damage to the Toxapex, who still has 60 health remaining. Coming back over to the Rogues, they get the big Malasada of their own into their hand, and they do get a first and only needed energy for the Sableye as they're continuing with these coin flips. They get a Tails on the first one, but they get a first heads, and it's the only heads they will get on that second coin flip. 20 damage from the Spike Cannon. Dewpider with 40 health remaining, and they do pull the Pyukumuku with that innards out ability. If it is discarded by offense, from an opposing Pokemon, it does do 50 damage to the Pokemon that does that damage, as there's 30 more damage onto the Toxapex. They are willing to run the risk of these coin flips, are the Hydros, as the Lily, not the Lusamine. I'm sure Lily wouldn't want to hear that, is pulled by the Rogues. And again, they're continuing the Spike Cannons. They get 1. They get 2, and it will be the Dewpider again being discarded. The Rogues are 1 point away from tying up this series and taking game 3. And with all of that, that would be incredibly fitting with how we've said these two sides cannot seem to separate each other. Even having that tie game, the first we've seen all season long in game 1, the fishing net being played. It is this Dewpider being pulled back out from the discard pile. They were clearly hoping to get the Shelter, I imagine, with that Cloyster having just been pulled, but the hooks will continue from the Dewpiders, and it does finally get that Toxapex off the board. And it is a first point for the Hydros. They're trying to bring this game back. They've still got that Pyukumuku on the bench. The Sableye being moved into the active spot. The rare candy, the second rare candy being pulled for the Rogues. Still no Sandile in sight, as Sableye and Marini have 1 extra energy than what they require, but there's 30 damage onto the Dewpider. The Hydros are going to pull another fishing net to try and get that Shelter out of their discard pile if they choose to play it. And they think about it, but then they wait. And then they go for it. So they're going to play the fishing net. They will get that Shelter into their hand, immediately moving it onto the bench. They do get a first energy onto it as well. Now, Cloyster only requires 2. They're going to retreat the Dewpider, ensuring it will be able to not be discarded by the Sableye. And it is that 10 damage onto the Sableye from the Shelter. Now, Cloyster only does 50 damage, but with that guard press, it does reduce damage that it takes by 20. The second Sableye has been pulled for the Rogues. It does get its first energy as well. And they continue with these scratches from the Sableye, this time onto the Shelter, bringing it down to 40 health. The Hydro is pulling their second Pyukumuku. They still do not have an Araquanid here, as Cloyster coming online. It does have that 3 energy retreat cost as well, but the guard press, as we said, 50 damage, reducing the damage it takes by 20. And the Rogues pulling their second Toxapex, immediately getting it onto the bench as well. And Sableye only 10 health remaining. They will not want to keep it in the active spot. They are going to move the Toxapex into the active spot. It will take 4 heads to take down this Cloyster, but then with that 20 damage reduced, it will only do 60. So Cloyster is safe from being discarded. There's 3 energy now on the Toxapex. They get 1. They get 2. They only get 2, so it's actually only going to do 20 damage due to that guard press reducing the damage that Cloyster would have taken. It's got 60 health. This is great for the Hydros. This is going to buy them some time. They do pull their second Cloyster, and they can't run the risk of the Pyukumuku, because even if Pyukumuku is discarded and does that 50 damage to the opposing Pokemon, it will still mean the Rogues win, because they only need 1 more point. The Crocodile, the second Crocodile, has been pulled for the Rogues. Still no Sandile for the Kitakami Rogues in hand. They are wishing they could get those poaching fangs online for Crocodile as another coin flip. Here we go, the spike cannon. It gets 1, they get 2, they get 3, they get 4, and they are going to win the game. They needed all 4 to get that 60 damage onto the Cloister, and the Kitakami Rogues lock up this series. Both teams will receive 3 victory points towards the leaderboard, but this puts the Hydros on top as next round they will be going up against the 2nd place Olivine Raiders, whereas for now the Rogues in 3rd place next round will be going up against the Holland Allies. But with all that said, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what cards you pulled today, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you when you see me.